Hey, good afternoon. It's Sandy Casella here with Diana Lizarazo, and we are on the flip side again. So thanks everyone for joining us and for coming to ask questions. Today is our question and answer period. So Diana and I are going to answer some questions about flipping or investing in real estate. And Diana, you have a bunch of questions from the investors that you've polled. So let's get started. How are you, Diana?
I'm good. I'm good.
Yeah.
Excited to answer questions, as I'm sure you are. I think it's always fun to answer questions, right? To see, because just understanding even people's different perspectives on things it's also nice. Because usually through their questions, you can kind of see their perspectives on, whatever issues that they're having.
Yeah, and a lot of times people are kind of they're shy to ask a question, but usually if you're thinking of it, somebody else has that same question as well. So um, it's always good to ask the questions because it'll help somebody else as well.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it is very true. We all think that way, where it's, oh my God, I don't want to ask. I don't want to sound stupid. I think that's the majority. You're worried that you're going to sound stupid, and it's just like, ask the question.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
you just realize that another person afterwards will be like, oh, I was also thinking that too. I'm glad you asked.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
So let's
Amazing.
start with so the first question is I'm gonna just because there's so many of the same kind of questions, so
Okay.
I'm just gonna generalize it.
Yeah.
So the question is um, basically how do you find the right property? Like what can the people do to find the right property?
Okay. I'm going to type them into the chat here. So
Okay.
okay. So how
So while
so
you
how to
type, I'll give you what I would start with.
okay. So how to find the right property?
How
Okay.
to find, yeah, the right property.
Okay.
So I'll start first and just tell you what I think. So when it comes to finding the right property, you have to first understand a lot of things like your risk criteria, your your like time and money. How much time you have, how much money you have, and you also, so I feel like these things are the things that you have to know before even looking at a property and just understanding your criteria. It's like, what is your goal and what is your criteria?
Okay. Okay. So right. I think that's the most important question is you need to have a destination, right? Because if you don't have any destination, how do you know what the right property is, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Because something, for example, you is like the perfect deal. For me, I'm like zero, no interest, please, next.
Yes, yes, yes. Exactly. I agree.
So what do
Um,
you think? What do you think?
sorry,
What is your
guys.
point of view on it?
I think you're 100% right. I think the answer to that question is what's your goal? If you don't have a goal, if you get in your car and you start driving and you don't know where you're going, you can't possibly get to where you want to go. So you have to find the right property. You need to first know what's your goal. What's your goal? What's your destination? So what's your I think once you have the questions to that, what's your capabilities of doing this, right? If you
Mhm.
don't know, if you get into a project that's over your head, it's going to be a problem.
Yeah.
So you have to know what your
And I think,
capabilities are.
yeah, and I think also because usually think big, people always think long term, and they're just like, I would like to have 5 houses, but you don't have even one yet, right? And then because you make the goal so big,
Yeah,
getting to those 5 houses just sounds very, even if you're like, I want to have, like 5 houses within 10, 15 years, 20 years, whatever, as like a long term. But just
yeah,
when you think too big, it's very hard to get into the details where it's like, okay, now how do I get that one? And what is that one going to do? Is it going to be a flip? It's going to be a burr? Is it just going to be a tenanted, just tenanted, like a turnkey property that's tenanted? You know, what is the sorry what is the kind of even property that you want to get.
right. Okay. I think the only thing I would say to that is I don't see anything wrong with having a big goal. Um, I don't see anything wrong with having a big goal as long as you have the timeline to go with it, right? So you're right. If your goal is to eventually have 5 houses, you've got to start with one. So you can
Exactly.
have a big goal, your vision can be big, and your goal can be big. But what are the steps you're going to take
Yeah.
to get there? So the
Exactly.
first one
That's
is
my point, like breaking it down, right? Because now it's like, okay, you know what your long-term goal is, but what's, for example, your goal for this year? Is it getting one, or is it just getting information about the one? Or
yeah,
is it, like I want to buy by this day, maybe September, then at least because then you at least are giving yourself also deadlines, and also you still need the criteria. I mean, what is this house going to do for you? Is it making you money? Is it, for example, like a pre-construction where you're not making money until it closes,
yeah,
and like, or maybe you're not even making money yet. You just want a house that appreciates in value, right? And you're making money. I mean, in the future you're making money, but it's not on day one, right? So it's just like really
right.
understanding what are the goals behind it, and like you said, what are your capabilities to meet those goals? Because you may think like, I'm going to do a flip. You look into it and you're like, maybe not.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Especially now, I think, because flips are a little trickier now because the market's so high, number one, and number two, the cost of material has gone up so much, right?
Yeah.
So
Estimating renovations are
yeah,
very complicated right now.
yeah, because of the cost of material. But I think actually it's interesting because I was having a conversation with someone this morning about investing in new construction as opposed to investing in resale. So I know a lot of people have made a lot of money on new construction. I've never done a lot of new construction. I'm not a big huge fan of it, only because you're basically lending the builder money, right? And you have no control. You have absolutely no control. You don't even have control whether you're going to get that money back. There's no guarantee on your return. There's no guarantee on timelines, and so you're tying up all that money without any guarantee on a return, right? I mean, if you're going to do that, there's a lot of things you can do. If you're looking for a return on your investment from day one, that needs to be resale,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah, I agree with you on that too. But again, I feel like it depends on the kind of investor because, yeah, let's say
Yeah,
for me, I'm really about once I've closed, I need to start making money immediately. Or
right.
like at least after the renovations are done, like, okay, renovations are 3 months. On that day, it's like I have like a month or 2 months, whatever, to find the tenants. But the goal is once those tenants are in there, right?
You're
Or
good to
once
go.
the flip is done, like there needs to be money needs to be made, right? Whereas
Yeah,
exactly what you said, like a pre-construction is more futuristic money, like, yeah, maybe in 5 years I'll sell it or something, maybe in 10 years I'll sell it or something, or you'll have your tenants, and then maybe you'll start making money.
right. But that could be 2, 3 years down the road. Or
Exactly. Yeah.
projection could be for 2 years and it could end up being 4 years, right?
Yeah, and then you're just losing money and all that time that you've been waiting.
Yeah.
On a
I
business
guess,
sense, it's not really a good strategy if you're
yeah,
planning to run it like a business. If you're just wanting to put your money in a place, I mean, and if you just want to like put it somewhere, I mean,
yeah.
it is good in that sense.
I guess realistically, yeah, like if you've got money sitting in an account in the bank right now and you want to invest it in pre-construction, that's a little bit different. But if you're
Hmm.
looking for something to make a return very quickly, pre-construction's not the one, right?
Yeah.
So,
And like you
you
said, just too many variables for things to go wrong, delays.
yeah, for sure. Okay. Well, since you've been investing, maybe do you have a story of maybe something that didn't go right for you that could be you know,
I could
some
talk
other people?
about a partnership that went very wrong.
Okay. Okay.
I had done so, and it was, I think, it's not very wrong, as I mean, because like I did a partnership. I kind of got, very excited, and I was getting to the phase of my time where it's like now I need to like that you either using other people's money, or in this case I was being the money partner because I was wanting to just see how the process worked with my partner being the active partner. So what we did in this scenario was that he's supposed to be the active partner. So he's the GC. He's the GC. He was supposed to be managing the full project. And that being said, I mean, we were going to hire, for example, once the tenants were in, we're going to hire a property manager and everything, but he's the point of contact, right? So he was supposed to be completely active. I am supposed to be very passive. And I felt I'm very comfortable to get into this because I mean, me and my husband do renovations. We do properties on the side, and I was like, this would be a good test to start figuring out how the partnerships and everything work. And specifically at that time, my husband was also very, very busy, and it was just like one of those like it's an amazing deal and I just wanted to be a part of it. And this was the best way because my husband couldn't do the work.
Yeah.
So, um, so when we started the partnership, I mean, there were some things about him, and then because I'm an engineer, I thought that I have no problems talking with men because I deal with men all the time. So I had these notions that I'm used to talking to men, so I shouldn't have a problem in that area. I have a husband that does renovations, so I'm pretty good in that area. And so I thought, like I should be good with this
Yeah.
kind of a deal, right? Because I was like, I feel like I have a good basis. But then I realized that um, for example, one of the things I realized was that this guy was able to run circles around me when it came to, for example, renovation talk, because I was, for example, the type of person like I understand the basics. Like if I can see something and know it's wrong just by experience because of what me and my husband do, and I can't say I'm fully involved, but I know quite a bit. Like I know more than the average person, but I couldn't explain it was the problem.
Mm. Oh,
Right?
okay.
So this guy would run circles around me, saying things just to make excuses because um, he was just, I guess, like having like too way too busy because he was doing other deals at the same time. He had like three
Oh,
other properties that he was
yeah.
also doing this active partnership with. And so that was like the number one issue. And then again, probably because he was super stressed, like one of the things that I also realized was another important part was how important it is to find someone that is a relationship builder and not a transaction. Because
Yeah.
he would treat me like a transaction. Like I've never felt so like I've never because normally when you're a customer even, you know, these people are providing a service to you and they should treat you in a certain way, right? Like I wasn't
Yeah.
even treated, or I mean, so he was treating me, I guess, like a customer. Like he would just the way he would talk to me. For example, and again, it's just I realized this guy was very disorganized and I don't know, didn't have the experience that I expected him to have because I'm used to the way my husband works. So
Yeah.
maybe that's what it was. Because again, I don't know if he actually had experience afterwards because I read like some reviews, but then realized that it was more related to another kind of job and not like being a general contractor. So I was just like, so that I don't really know, but it's just kind of like these things were coming up that were just lots of different problems. And then I was just like, oh, I don't know if, because I looked him up too. I searched him. I was like, like this guy sounds amazing. Or not amazing. I mean, he was good. Like, not, he sounded good. And it's like something that I could work with.
Yeah.
And again, probably because he was too busy, he ends up hiring like people from Kijiji. So they made a disaster of the house because he never went to the property to check on them.
Yeah.
So then we had these kind of issues. We realized that he has very terrible communication skills because we got to the point that not his workers, but because he subcontracted everything out. So his subcontractors were getting frustrated with him, and then I was having to deal with them directly because they didn't know what he was asking for. There
Right.
because he would always because he didn't care about the project, and it was more again probably because he had so many going on that he would maybe basically tell the subcontractors kind of like do whatever you want, just get it done. right?
Yeah,
And when you say do whatever you want and get it done, that can mean so many different things to different people. And it really
of
depends on
course.
their skill level or their interest to get it done, right? Like some people have like quality is very important and they'll get it done with a lot of quality without a lot of direction. There's other people that need a lot of direction because if you tell them whatever, they're just going to do the bare minimum. So we had that issue, that problem where it's like they were just doing the bare minimums and didn't really think things through. So I think these people were what I like to call like they were just workers. They're not they're not the kind of people that can manage themselves and kind of think through things. You know, for example, we had a thing where we had like everything drywalled, and then for some reason there was like a cable that came out of the wall and then back in again. And so we were just kind of like, why wasn't that tucked into the wall? We were like, what was the purpose of that? And they put up drywall and just kind of worked around the place instead of cleaning up, you know, like, okay, let's hide these walls behind these wires, let's say behind the wall or whatever. Like
Yeah,
they just kind of worked around everything, which made
yeah.
issues.
Wow,
So we
that's
had,
good.
so we didn't, I think we were like a month in, and then like we were supposed to start immediately. We were actually supposed to start before closing in the sense of like designing was supposed to get done by then, and and we were supposed to have like everything done and picked out before the closing. Like none of that happened, but then I was thinking, fine, that's fine because we have demo anyways that needs to happen. So during this time period while they're demoing, we can do it. So I didn't bother me, but the problem was then we found out like he doesn't even have the manpower to
Yeah.
actually do this. So then the project didn't start until about maybe a month in. And it was
Uh,
me trying to push all the time. And he'd bring like one person in to come for one day. So I think he was like probably moving his teams around.
right, right.
And
Yeah,
then
sounds like it.
and then we found and then he kind of let us know that he found people on Kijiji and he was struggling because of COVID. Obviously people don't want to get paid. I mean, don't want to get paid because they rather have their money, just free money, right? And and then so it was just kind of like these things all like just like it's just like I felt like the worst everything that could happen happened,
Oh
you
my
know, like
goodness.
so then and that and then so we kind of gave up on him. I think we were like finally when they came in and some of the work was done, we kind of gave up on him and we just had to let him go was because we ended up also finding out that from our because we actually had one unit that was tenanted and the other ones were the ones that were getting full renovations
Okay.
done.
Yeah.
So and we had built a good relationship with that tenant, so she was kind of keeping us in the loop with things, and she had huge concerns with what they were doing, and there was, for example, on her side, there was like a structural beam that needed to be added, and so she was worried because of the way they did it, it didn't look to code. So then she was kind of like keeping us up to date with everything. When we then one day she just told us that one night she heard kids running around upstairs and crying at like 2, 3 in the morning, and that she's like, fine, you know, these people are working, but in the middle of the night, which and that was another thing that she ended up telling us, where we're just like, why are people working in the middle of the night? But again,
Yeah.
I think he was just moving his teams around and just trying to work with, I guess, what he had. And then, but what basically we just like all of a sudden we're just like we had to let him go and take care of it ourselves was when we found out that there were kids on the job site. So I guess like this person, you know, didn't have anyone to babysit in the middle of the night, so he brought and it just made it the whole thing was really bad, right? Because like as a liability, that is like a really big
Hmm.
issue, right?
For
Like the
sure.
kid breaks something,
Yeah.
like the homeowners are the ones that get in trouble for that, right? Like I
Yeah.
mean the landlords or whatever, right? Like there
Yeah.
were so many issues just behind it, and that was when we were just like we had to cut it off, and we were just like this is not happening. Like we can't deal with any more drama from this guy because it was just
Oh
too
my
much of a
goodness.
disaster with him. Like
Yeah.
just like didn't care about our project like that, like treating me like a transaction,
Yeah.
Like everything that they tell you that you should be looking for a JV partner, like he did the whole opposite of everything.
Yeah. So how did you eventually turn that into a successful solution? And what would you like? Were you able to turn that into a successful solution? And what would you do differently going
Yeah,
forward?
yeah. So for example, it was all my fault from the beginning because the way I normally do things is I would start with like, because with another guy, for example, I partnered up with another guy and it's a very good relationship, but I started with a private lend. Like I lent him money and we did it on the purpose, like, so I can see how he works, how
Yeah.
he's doing everything, and then decide if I want to do a partnership with him. And then we would talk all the time. Like we created a good friendship out of it,
Yeah.
even before partnering up. Whereas but the funny thing, what happened was that, so this guy sent me the deal, like this guy that I private lent first. And the amount of money he was making on it, I was just like, oh man, I wish I could be a part of it.
Yeah.
And, but with him, I kind of stuck my guns. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to private lend to him because I need to know how he works first before I can work with him. So then with this guy, again, this other guy finds like an amazing deal, and and then he came with, like, he was recommended by somebody that I trusted, which was detrimental because I ended up finding out that this person that recommended him never had even worked with them. So he was just
Oh,
recommending without like saying this person was amazing. And then this
yeah.
person, for example, like he had a reputation already, and it was like when you hear about him online, he had like a good reputation, as in like, he's doing a property a month, like, I was hearing so many things that I was just like, man, this guy must know what he's doing. So these things kind of played a role in it.
Yeah.
And sorry, I totally forgot what was the question. I feel like
We
I
were,
veered off, didn't I?
that's okay. No, no, not at all. Not at all. We were just saying like how did you turn this into a success? And then what did you learn from that
Oh, yeah,
has
yeah.
helped you or will is going to help you going forward?
Yeah, so with him, I saw the deal and it was an amazing deal. We'd make really good money, and it was one of those that we're gonna be refinancing the money out, and we're gonna be cash flowing on day one by a good amount of money. And so then I broke my rule, basically. Is what
Okay.
happened. I
So,
broke my rule because I was seeing all these good deals always coming up, and I
oh,
was just
yeah,
like, you know what? I want to get in. He came with a reputation, and the person that referred me to him, not referred me, but that would talk highly about him,
yeah,
like I trusted that. And then afterwards obviously realized that he had never worked with him before, and then I was like, oh, I probably should have asked that, right? Because I just kind of like trusted him because he said he's so good.
yeah.
um so don't break your rules, I think, is the first thing you should do. Never break your rules, because you like that. Like I broke my rule and then it
Yeah.
went bad. It went bad for a little bit, but again, because I come with experience, and I think, to be honest, the luck of the market going up a lot really
Yeah.
helped out, because I think, like, for example, like I was able to refinance all my money out. I think if it were in like a normal market, I probably would have had some money stuck in the deal. It would have stayed stuck in the deal because I had to pay him. I paid him, but then obviously all the damages that his workers caused, my husband had to come in and fix everything, right? So
Yeah.
I basically paid again full price for the things that needed to be done, just because of the amount of damages that they did. Like, to tell you, one of the things that happened was, for example, they were painting and they used the spray paint.
Yeah.
And when you spray paint, like, you have to be very meticulous and you have to cover everything,
Yeah.
right? They didn't. And not even to say they didn't, they also even didn't take out, for example, like light switches, they didn't take out light fixtures. So basically, they sprayed the whole rooms with paint. Our windows were white, our light fixtures were all white, Our light bulbs were all white. Like everything that was
God,
in there was white because
that's
they,
weird.
yeah.
Yeah,
Like for example, we were planning in one of the units, we were planning to keep the cabinets in. So they
yeah,
sprayed, and those were going to be white, so that's fine. But the problem
yeah,
was that the handles were also spray painted white, and we were planning to change those handles to new handles. So I was just
yeah.
like to the guy, so what do we do now? We change the handles if they're not the same size, then we're gonna
Yeah,
have dots there. And to me, I was
right,
just
right,
kind of
right.
like, how is this not common knowledge if
Yeah,
you're a general contractor? Or,
yeah,
for example, just even these workers didn't think about it. They're just told paint, and they weren't probably told what was being coming off. That's probably what happened, right? They probably weren't told, for example, the handles were coming off. They probably were told do whatever again, right? Because I had a when he was getting in trouble for like the bad work that he did, because my husband
yeah,
had to come to like explain to him everything, because I was just like, I don't have any control of this. I know, like, I say anything and he just runs loops. So my husband actually was there,
yeah,
and then he was just saying like you could. So within that is how we ended up finding out like all these things, because my husband was like, like why is this happening, and why did you do this, and why did you do that? And then we end
mhm,
up finding out, he just wasn't directing them, and he was like he was actually on the phone with one of the subcontractors, and we heard him saying that, the guy was like, you said do whatever you want, so we did
mhm,
it. And
mhm.
then it was really funny because then he looked at us and he was just like, oh, I did say
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. It's kind of weird though, because you would think if you're a professional painter, you're a professional painter. Like, you know,
Yeah, but I think they were, well, and actually someone else told me apparently they do that in apartment buildings.
you just paint
Uh,
everything.
they just paint everything. Yeah, apparently because of time constraints when you're dealing with those rental buildings,
Hmm.
apparently they just, I guess to save cost, they just paint everything.
That'd be weird though. Like to paint the light switches, the plate covers and stuff is kind of, it's a
Yeah.
little bit weird, but yeah. I guess you fall into these things and you live and learn. You learn the questions you need to ask next time, like maybe seeing the work that somebody's done, talking to
Yeah.
people that they've done work for, I think is important too, right? You
Yeah.
gotta do those things if you're gonna get into a joint venture with somebody, for sure.
Hmm.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, what other questions do we have here? What other
Okay.
questions?
Do we want to talk about, or actually, I was gonna say more, should we talk more in detail about like what are the different criterias or goals to think about even just with one property itself? Like what should people think about, for example, to decide, between, like a renovation type of property deal, like a turnkey, like should we talk more in that detail with that?
Sure. So you mean if you're looking for a property or if you're
So if
deciding
you're a
what to
first
get
time, let's
into?
talk about like a first timer. Like what would
Okay.
you suggest to a first timer to do for buying their first property, the first
Okay, let me type
rental, a first like investment property?
investment. Okay. Let me put that in there. So what should you look for your first property when you're first getting?
Yeah.
Okay. One sec. Can you hear me typing? Can you hear click 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 click
So I
first?
could tell, do you want me to tell you with mine? So for your first property, I mean, we talked about the risk level,
Yeah.
but I feel like the very first thing I would feel like the easiest one would be like a turnkey property, just to
Yeah.
rent it out and just to learn how it is to deal with a tenant, like all the different things related to a tenant. I think would be a good start.
Okay. So do you think that everybody that's starting out investing should start with something turnkey?
Um, like it depends on, because if you're gonna start like a business,
Yeah.
then it really depends. Also, I mean, if you're a contractor, for example, I mean, I feel like contractors could get into the burrs, for example, because or yeah, or the flips. I mean, a contractor could get into the flips, for example, because I mean, you expect if you have experience with like quoting clients' jobs, you should be able to quote
Yeah.
uh, like a renovation for your own flip. And then, I mean, just making sure you do your due diligence, understand the rest of the costs involved, right? to
Yeah,
a flip.
for sure. Yeah. I think the first buy should be whatever you're comfortable with, right? Like, I guess if you don't have any experience flipping properties or renovating properties, then buying something that you're gonna has a big, huge reno to it is probably not a good idea,
Mm-hmm.
because you don't have that experience yet. So start somewhere smaller, and
Mm-hmm.
that could be just a buy and hold, right? And then just get a tenant in there. I think the biggest thing is just taking that first step and taking action. Like, a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people are just so nervous about it, but you're not really, like, let's say you're buying a house for 700,000. You're not spending 700,000. You're spending whatever it is your down payment is.
Mm-hmm.
So
Or if
if
you're
it's
young,
20%,
sorry,
yeah,
finish.
yeah. I think you got to just get into the market. It takes it
Yeah.
takes taking, you got to take action. You got to take action, get into the market, get into something that's in your comfort level. Like, you don't
Mm-hmm.
want something that's a massive renovation when you've never experienced renovations before, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you've renoed your own house, or, you've done renos for people, that's a little bit different than never having renoed a house before, because it is a lot of work. And then when you start to take a house apart, you realize there's other things are going to come up that need to get addressed that you haven't seen. I have a great story about one of our first investment properties. So
Yeah.
I can't remember this. So this was going back a few years, but we bought this property in Brampton, and closing date, we drove up. So there was two houses and there was a mutual drive in between. And so you went, you know how those are, you drive down the mutual drive, and then there's a driveway on either side that are kind of on the property, right? So on the day of closing, we drove in and we drove to the back and we parked. And then I looked at the house as we were getting out of the car, and I said, I wonder what that window is. It was a bungalow that we bought. And I said, I wonder what that window is up there. Because there was, like, you know how you have it's a bungalow, but it has the attic and then it's got this window. And I said, I wonder what that window is up there, because there was no second story. So we went in the house and we went up in the attic, and we found a staircase that was coming down, but it was like blocked off by drywall into the living room. And so
Oh.
we opened it up, and there was a staircase up to the attic. The attic was completely framed out. It wasn't drywalled or anything. It was completely framed out, and we ended up finishing the attic, and we ended up with a 1.5-story house as opposed to a bungalow, without having to, like, go through all the work of putting it. They'd already done it. Somebody had already done it. So we did really well on that house. So that was kind of one that we lucked out on. But you find things like that in older houses, right? So that can work on the other side of the coin. When you start doing renos and you start pulling things apart in a house, you've got to have a buffer there, because you're always going to find things that you weren't expecting.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the way it goes. So
Yeah,
but
that's so interesting. Yeah, to find just a staircase
I
in the
know.
middle.
Can you imagine? And you just walk down the staircase and there's, like, drywall right there. So it was right in the living room, but it was blocked off by drywall. So I don't know why they did that, but anyway, it worked out for us. It ended
Yeah.
up being, like, instead of being this little 2-bedroom bungalow, it ended up being like 4 bedrooms, right?
Oh,
Because it had
nice.
2 downstairs, 2 upstairs. So it ended up being a 4-bedroom house. So we did really well on that one. Yeah. It's interesting though, these older houses. So there's that's a good one. How to find the right house. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
what's the best one to buy as your first property? I think it comes down to your comfort level. But
Yeah.
if you haven't done one before, you might start with something that needs cosmetic updates as opposed to something that needs, a whole bunch of stuff done to it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Or for
yeah.
example, if you're a person who has a lot of money, let's say,
Yeah.
then going like that, like let's say into private lending or partnerships, help, because
Yeah.
you also just learn from them, right? Or you can even do, because lots of people do that, where you learn, like you partner up with them, but then you're also, learning from what they do. And obviously you're going with someone that comes with experience, but
Yeah.
just, because then it's, especially when it's a partnership, it's nice because, like that, like you can be like, hey, I'm going to give you this money to do this, but can I just see what you do or how you do things or whatever.
Yeah.
And a lot of investors don't mind, helping with that, because Again, it really depends because if that person wants to themselves do it as a business, they
Yeah.
do. Or if it's just more for knowledge and just to understand like what it is that the active partners do, for example, then it's also good in that case too, right? Because then you just at least have some awareness that, what's going on with my money or something if you're like that kind of person that needs to know,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Do you have another question?
Okay, let's see. Should we do like a finance question or should we stick to like
Sure.
property ones? Because mainly like that a lot people just ask in the general sense about um like what is private financing and how do private passive partners work?
Okay. So let's tackle, well, we'll do one at a time. So let's do the difference between um, private and the bank, private funds
Yeah,
and banks.
sure, we could do that. Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about that. Okay, so you do private you do private funding. So maybe give an example of what private funding is as opposed to a bank, and maybe the criteria for qualifying.
Yeah, yeah. So when you yourself want to lend out money to a property, I would say the differences are when you're doing it obviously as an individual, whereas the bank is doing it as an institution. So like the different criteria is where sometimes your lending becomes or the kind of deals that you lend to are very different. So like in like one main thing with a bank or even just any mortgage institution or yeah, certain mortgage institutions are that the property, for example, needs to be livable, right?
Right.
So that discounts major flip jobs, right?
Yeah.
Because if it's not livable, like if for example your house doesn't have a kitchen or a bathroom, and
Yeah.
let's say there's only one bathroom in the house, then it's already considered non-livable in there.
Right. Or like, yeah, I guess sometimes where you see houses, there's good opportunities come up that a house has already been gutted. And
Yeah,
it's a great opportunity because it's already gutted.
yeah.
You just have to finish it, but it's harder to get
You
traditional
wouldn't get
finance
any,
on
yeah, you
something.
wouldn't get any financing
Yeah.
from like an
Yeah.
A lender or B lender. You're zero. If it's a house that's gutted, already start
Yeah.
thinking about that. Okay, I'm gonna
Yeah.
probably have to go into private funding for that. And that's
Right.
where the private or passive partners come in. You're looking for money in some area.
Right.
Um, so yeah, that's one of them. And then, for example, another thing I guess that the difference is that private lenders don't. I mean, you do have a focus on the person themselves because I mean that's always important. You want to know who you're lending to. You want to like check them out and know that they know what they're doing.
Yeah.
But it's not as important as bankers because banks really focus on the person a lot, whereas as a
Right.
private lender, you focus more on the
On
property
the
itself.
property. Yeah.
Yeah. So the focus is, I mean, both sides are there, but I think I would say the difference is like banks focus on the individual a lot more than us as private lenders, we focus on the property a lot more. But on both
Yeah.
sides, we always are checking the person and the property out.
Right. I think some rural properties as well, right? Some rural properties, it's harder to get traditional financing on them.
Yeah, it's yeah harder. Yeah, because for example, I know like if your house has a well, people say that that sometimes becomes harder or septic tanks and stuff. It's just more selective. You're going more to like a B lender side.
I think it depends. I think that also depends where it is though, because the house that I own that I live in is on well and septic, but I'm fairly close to like I'm just out. I'm in Ancaster, so just
Hmm.
out halfway between Ancaster and Brantford. So maybe that makes a difference. I think
Hmm.
it might be, and I'm with a bank, with one of
Hmm.
the big five. So I think
Oh,
I
you
think
are?
those kind of things,
Okay.
yeah, I think those kind of things make a difference. But I do know people who bought rural properties, like let's say Brighton, in Brighton, and they're a little harder to finance. They've had to go through a private lender or a B lender but they're more out. They're more really rural as opposed to me. I'm not super, super rural, right? I'm fairly close to everything. But so that's interesting. That
But could it also be that they have a lot of properties? Like, were they living there or they were?
yeah, they were living there. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. So it's weird. It's a little harder to finance those, but I think
Mm.
so. We had a situation in the last little while with a client that's buying a property that had a fire, and there were some issues with that on getting financing. That makes a difference. Maybe the other example could be like a grow house, a former grow up, right?
Yeah.
Where they have to be remediated. So, or it could be the person, right? Depending on, yeah, like you said earlier, how many properties does the person own? Because once you get to so many properties, it's harder to finance through a bank,
Mm.
regardless of what your income statement looks like, or what those properties are bringing in. Once you get to what I think maybe about five, I think it's about five houses.
Well, that's another, I guess, misconception that um, a lot of people think that you can't get funding for like rental properties. It's actually the maximum is 14, but that once you hit 14 houses, then you go into commercial lending. And then again, when you're in that area, I mean, you're running it like a business. So a
Yeah,
commercial lending, you start, it's all about the income that the property's making. And that's why, for example, like I say, income for me is very important. I need to be making money on day one because
right.
that's the expectation of commercial lenders also, is that they're basically, if you're running a business, you should be making money on day one. Like if you know what you're doing, you should be making money. So technically, I mean, you can always have unlimited properties. And again, like when you're dealing on the residential side, it's technically up to 14. But even at 14, like once you start hitting maybe like, yeah, 3 or 4 properties, I mean, I feel like it technically becomes a commercial lending because you have to show that you can support these properties, right? So it
Right.
kind of, I feel like you said, it is like, even though in the residential side, I believe 14 is the max, and even different A lenders and B lenders have their different criteria. Like I know some A lenders, for example, it's only 5 or 6, others go to 10. And it's more, I think, on the B lender side where you can get up to those 14 properties. But
Yeah.
again, I mean, the way I see it is even if you're getting up to those 14 properties, they expect to see the income, right? Like you have to show that you can support this, right? So it's like your properties do need to make money because you can't have, like, for example, in the GTA, there's this conception that, like you can rent a property and you're not a lot of people rent properties in the GTA and they're not making any money on their houses, and they just think like, oh, in like 10 years down the road, it'll start making me money, right? Like
Mhm.
if you're buying many of those, then obviously you're only going to get to probably 3, depending on your income levels, because you're to say your business is at a loss for the next 10 years.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. Makes sense.
Yeah. So I think probably that's why a lot of people think, for example, like maybe 5 houses, because yeah, I think by 3 to 5,
Yeah.
like you need to be making money. Like think of yourself as getting a commercial loan anyways, because it matters how much money you're bringing in.
Yeah.
Because
But
imagine
I
like
would
having
think
to
if you're,
support 14 mortgages. Yeah, a bank would
yeah,
be like, nope.
yeah. But I think at some point, if you're buying that many properties, you want to do that as a company anyway. You want to have an incorporated company. You don't really want to be buying all those in your own private name. Doesn't make much sense,
Yeah,
tax wise or liability wise, right? Doesn't make any
exactly.
sense. Yeah,
Yeah. So
for
yeah, the
sure.
capabilities are there, but you're right. It doesn't end up probably happening because, like you said, you start moving. If you're buying a lot of houses, you start moving into that commercial kind of sector, and
Yeah,
um, you're incorporating, because then technically, if you have a lot of corporations, because I mean, you don't also want to have like all your 10 properties in one corporation, because if something happens,
yeah,
like that could affect all your 10 properties. So even there, you're probably like sectioning them off into smaller chunks, or
yeah,
like, like maybe 5, 5, 5 or something like that, whatever is
yeah,
comfortable.
yeah. Makes sense. Okay, what else do we have here? What other questions do we have?
Um,
I think we have time for a couple more.
okay, do we want to talk, okay, so should we talk about the passive, or we can talk about like even just the we can do the difference between the active and the passive partners.
Sure. Okay.
So do you want to, I don't know if you want to write that one down.
Yeah. Okay. So
the difference between an active and a passive partner basically is you're basically thinking in the sense, it's almost the same thing like private lenders think the same way, but if you don't have the money, if you have like the experience, but you don't have the money, then an active partner is basically a person that's coming with experience and they've done it before, like for example, if they've done many flips, so they've done many flips, they come with the experience, but maybe they're tapped out because maybe they're now starting to multiply. Maybe now they're doing like, instead of one flip, maybe they're doing 2 or 3, right? But then they themselves may not have the capital to be, fully putting all the money in.
right.
So then in that way, that's when a passive partner comes in where we're like, oh, I would like to make, money on my money, but I don't have, for example, the time or the interest. I just want to make money on my money, but I just don't want to be involved in the process of, let's say, getting a flip to work or something. He's like, I just want to, put my money to work. So a passive person is basically what it is. You're just putting in the money. You're receiving, maybe you're depending on what it is. You're receiving like a monthly, quarterly, yearly report of like, usually if it's, for example, just a tenanted property, then it's probably like a yearly or semi-annually type of report of just like how things are going. With flips, obviously it's a little bit different because you're probably talking about different stages in the process. So maybe weekly, depending on how quickly things are moving along.
Yeah.
But I would say the difference like that. So the difference is your active partner is very experienced, knows what they're doing in that specific area, whatever it is, burrs, flips, maybe buying holds. And they're just doing all the work for you and just giving you reports. And the passive partner is just like, take my money, make me money.
So what would be the difference really then between a passive partner and someone who's just lending you money to do the flip, like a private lender?
Mm-hmm. So I would say the major difference is you if you're partnered up with someone that's really good, they can probably make you a lot of money, more money than private lending. I would say private lending is a safer way of doing things. Because, for example, like an example between a private lender and the passive partner is, and there's different types of passive partners. Because, for example, even if I'm a passive partner, which I'm more on the active side, but if I were to be a passive partner, I think just because of my experience, I'd probably still, for example, secure my money to the property. Normally, passive people don't do that, right? You're putting the down payment, you're putting the renovation costs, right? And then you have an REI lender mortgage, right?
Right.
The private lender is securing their money to the property, and you're making your interest rate, right? Even in that sense, for example, like a private lender is making their interest, a passive partner is like not making any money. If it's a flip, for example, they're not even making any money during the whole process, right? Because it's the sell of the flip where you divide the profits out and you say like whatever the division is, then you're making your money at the end, right?
Yeah, and I think a passive partner would have more say in the process.
Yes,
they're more involved in the everyday thing and what's the goal and how long are we going to take and all that kind of stuff. Whereas a private lender, they're lending you the money. They don't really have any say in when you're going to pay it back, other than if
you have terms. I mean, in the private lender, you do have your terms, but you're not involved in the project.
Yeah,
basically, like upfront, you are requesting information. Like if it's a flip, you're going to know, what are the renovations that are being done. You're going to know the quotes. But you're not going beyond that. You're not going to be like, hey, although there are some private lenders that do that. But in general, like an experienced private lender isn't going to call you up and be like, hey, I need a status report on your flip or something. Whereas like a private lender will probably be on you a little bit more because obviously their money's on the line. And like that is technically unsecured money, right? So normally a passive lender will be on title is also the difference, right? A passive lender is on title. a private lender's on
Is a
mortgage.
lien holder. Yeah.
Yeah.
They would have a lien against the property.
A mortgage.
A mortgage. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Let's tackle one more question.
Okay, let's see. I feel like actually we kind of technically talked about finding a good partner, but I don't know, should we elaborate that more? I think we basically talked about it with my story.
Yeah, I think we kind of, yeah, I think we covered that one pretty good in terms of how to find one, or how not to find one.
Yeah. What to make
not
sure
to
you
do.
pay attention.
Yeah, exactly. So I think we did that one. Yeah.
Okay.
I think you gotta let's talk maybe a bit about.
What
Okay,
do you
so
think on the time in the market? So this one I feel like is more of a question for you. I feel like you would probably, as a realtor, know, I mean, a better answer probably than I would, because I don't.
Okay, what's the question?
So timing the market and just finding,
Okay.
you know, finding, I guess, finding the right time to find the property.
Yeah. Okay, so I think that one's, I don't think you can time the market.
Yeah.
So I think the more you try to time the market, by the time you figure out what the market's doing, you've missed that stage of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, so if you're getting, especially if you're getting your news from, you're getting your information from the media or social media or wherever, that's the worst place, because whatever you're hearing is outdated at that point.
Exactly.
So I don't think you should ever really try to time the market. I think it just matters what your goal is. So I think it goes right back to the beginning. What's your goal, right? So there's always a market for properties that are in good condition and completely finished. There's always a market for that in any, no matter what the market is doing, right? And people have to live somewhere. So I think if the opportunity is there, if you can find the opportunity, you have to align yourself with a good team. And a good realtor who understands investing is a really good team member and worth their weight in gold. And I think a lot of people don't value that sometimes. They think, oh, you know what, I'll just work with whoever. But if you're not working with a realtor who understands investing or is an investor, you're at a disadvantage, right? So I had this question on the last group that we did last month in April. That was one of the questions that I had with one of the one-on-ones that I did. Was he said to me, how do I find a good realtor? I don't want to commit. I don't really want to commit to one person. So I think if you're a realtor that works with investors, you understand that if the investor gets a good opportunity, they're going to take it, and you have to be okay with that. And I'm okay with that. Like, if you know, if you're going to find a good opportunity, take advantage of that opportunity, because that's what you're there to do. I can help you find, you know, a good realtor can help you find properties that are off market, or where are the opportunities right now. Like, if you know your stats, that's why it's important to get on here, like for the sessions we do about stats and stuff, because that's what you need to know, right? What are the stats, and what's selling right now? Where are the opportunities? And there is a real opportunity right now for properties that are in absolute moving condition and very pretty and completely done inside. People will pay extra for that. So there's always an opportunity. You just have to know what they are, but you can't time the market. So I think when you have the opportunity, just get in, but always have a plan B, right? So I bought 2 properties right after COVID. So I think April last year, and then I bought another one in May, which was a very uncertain time, right? And the one I bought, I bought one in March, just before we went into the lockdowns, like just before COVID was really a thing. And I bought that property, and then people said to me, "Oh, you should just walk away. Like, don't close it." And I was like, "Why would I not close it? Of course I'm going to close the deal." And we've done very well on that property. So as long as you have a plan B, like what happens if the market goes down? If your intention is to flip and the market goes down, then maybe you're going to hold on to it for a little bit longer, but you always have a plan B or have an exit strategy. So I think I don't think you can ever time the market. Like, I think of people that I talked to 5 years ago, 6 years ago, 7 years ago, that were convinced the market was going to crash. So I'm going to wait for prices to come down. Even last year at this time, what are we, May? So April, May, I talked to a lot of buyers that said, oh, we're going to wait now because we think the market's going to come down. Well, what happened to those people now? Like,
Mm-hmm.
you just can't. I think that's always a mistake when you try to time the market,
Yeah,
because
exactly.
so many people have been saying that, and the people who jumped in and said, hey, I see an opportunity here, I'm going to buy, they've all done very well. So I just wouldn't try to time it. I would just, when the opportunity's there and you've got the opportunity to do it, do your due diligence, have a good team around you, and jump in. You got to take action. That's the main thing. Just take action in some way, right? And maybe the opportunity is a different type of property than what you were thinking of. Like, maybe instead of a single family where you're going to rent it or whatever, like, look for a different type of property. Where are the opportunities?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I completely agree. And especially, and I think one of them is just like how you're talking about the stats and everything.
Yeah.
Even just to add on to that is just when you start knowing, for example, the specific area you're interested in, and if you see, for example, the houses in this area are selling for, let's say 500, then just making sure you buy at the right, like let's say you're buying under that, you'll find that property in that area for like, you know, 480 or something, or something where you also they always say you want to make your money on the buy is always
Right.
the safest way to go about things too. Because yeah, I don't think you can ever time the market. It just that kind of just doesn't make sense to me,
Yeah.
because there's always going to be a deal. Like, there's always going to be someone in some situation that they're selling for whatever their reason is and they meet your criteria, right? Whereas like the rest of them don't, let's say.
Yeah.
Um, the rest of the houses don't meet the criteria. So I think, yeah, there's like, to me, timing the market doesn't make sense. When you're saying you're timing the market, is probably because you're just looking in the wrong places then.
Right.
And it's
Yes.
more like, oh, I'm looking in this city, whereas like maybe now, like you said, now it's like time to look in another city because right
Right.
now, or maybe even just the type of houses. I noticed that that's usually the thing, right? Like, for example, there's always like one year where detached homes are doing amazing, and then all of a sudden like the townhouse is doing better, and then the detaches aren't, and they
Right.
kind of swap around, or like the condos do better at one point and then now they're not. So it's just kind of like,
Yeah.
even within a city, you will see different types of houses. Some will do better than others, and understanding why that's happening so you can make the decision to actually buy
Yeah. And
the right deal.
we just saw that recently with the condo market in Toronto, right? Where everything in the news was all about how the condo market was crashing and blah, 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 blah. And then now the condo market is turning around.
Mm-hmm.
So, there was a real opportunity a couple of
Yeah.
months ago to buy, but the prices have really started to come up there for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's a big thing. Like, just figure out where the opportunities are, and
Yeah.
do your due diligence on the market. Have some good team members, I think, is most important. So
Yeah.
we're gonna wrap this up because we're getting close to 2. So any last words on what to do? What to do?
Just take action.
Take action.
And take action
Absolutely.
doesn't mean you need to buy right now, but maybe your take action is to maybe meet someone to help you get there. Or, for
Yes.
example, start analyzing properties or getting to know that market, or something to get you to the next step to buy. The next, like, having steps to get you to buying it and giving you some
Right.
time frames, like, for example, I'm going to research for a month. I don't know. I'm going to do this, but then let's say by December, I'm buying a property. So you better make sure that by December, you're buying that property, because, I think that's always a good way to take action, is giving yourself deadlines, because then
Yeah.
you're forced to, oh my God, it's coming up. I need to search about this, or I need to find
Yeah.
this person to help me with that, so I understand like what I'm doing or whatever.
Yeah. I think that's the most, I think you're right. You hit the nail on the head. Take action. You got to take some type of action and move yourself forward. So, what I would, that's the biggest thing to do. Just learn something, go out and learn something and work from there. But okay, so next week, next Tuesday, we're back to mindset. So we'll talk again about mindset. And then on the 27th, last Thursday of every month in the evening, we have our networking group, which we'll post as well. Yeah. So if you're watching this and you find this valuable, share it. Let your friends know that we're on here doing this every Tuesday, and I'll see you next week.
Awesome. Yeah. And just for people that know this month's topic, we're going to have 2 guest speakers on, and one's going to talk about related to real estate, but personal branding. So social media, personally branding yourself, and just also how to sell yourself, which is, I think, very important, because if you are a passive, I feel like for passive people, it's a lot easier because when you have money, people will come to you quickly. But as an active partner, if you're trying to sell yourself, it's very important to know how to talk to people and build those relationships. So that's what this month's topic will be about.
Awesome. I think that'll be great. Okay.
Awesome.
Thanks, Diana.
Thank you so much.
Have a great day.
You too. Bye. Bye, everyone.
Bye. I don't know how to stop. There we go.